Today on Revealing Wholeness, let's get an inside look into the phone conversations with Dr. Troy as he shares his experience, insights, and various topics related to you and your health and wellness. From discussions of the latest medical research to answering common questions that you may have and concerns about your health, this podcast is packed with valuable information for anyone seeking to improve their overall well-being. Whether you're looking for tips on nutrition, fitness, mental health, or general lifestyle advice, join us for the engaging conversation that may just change the way you approach your own health journey. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for an engaging phone discussion with Dr. Troy.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Troy Munson. Today is a special podcast. I have a guest with me, and I've known James for years and years, well over a decade. And we're going to talk about some of the trials and tribulations that he's gone through with his heart, with strokes, with water retention, with medical doctors, all that, and kind of everything that we've been through over the last many number of years. And this is our February 2024 Heart Month, kind of our bonus podcast. And I'm really delighted here to have James. James, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. It's a pleasure, and it's been a pleasure for many years to be your friend, but also to be part of your health journey as well. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of things. Let's start off way back. I don't even know what was the year when we first started working with things with the water retention. What year was that? We have any idea?
Oh, that was a little over 7 years ago.
7.
This year it'll be 8 years. Yeah, this year.
8 years. Jump into that first kind of, hey, I'm retaining lots of water here in a very short period of time.
Well, the easiest way to describe that is I'm a child of the 80s. Remember water beds?
Yeah.
I started to sound like that when I would walk. So
this is not a good sound, folks, just to let you know.
No, it just, I just started to notice slowly that I could not get rid of water. I would drink water and I would just retain it all the time. Consistent swelling, ankles, legs, begin to have like a pain in the legs from all the swelling, things of that nature going on there. Because of all the inflammation going on, like pain in like hands, feet, things of that nature as well.
Yeah, just everything just so tight.
I specifically remember it was the summertime, and I had trouble going to sleep because I would ache.
If I remember right, was it before that we were working with you on a motor vehicle crash? Was that after?
God, I've been in so many motor vehicle crashes. I've been 5 times now. So,
so I think it was before, because that's how we started getting kind of on top of this. And then when you told me everything that was going on, I was like, oh my gosh. And I know that we had a brief conversation. This was about the time that I was getting ready to head to Greece. And I was that concerned that I was really, really seriously tempting not to go to Greece.
Yes, I remember that conversation, but I think your wife might have had a matter.
She might have put an ultimatum. It's probably wise, though. I probably did need the break. So yeah, that went through. You were in the hospital for how many weeks?
I was in the ICU for 2 weeks, going through that experience there.
Yeah, I came out 2 or 3 times. Can't remember how many times I came out and saw you. And it was ironing because I felt like they were just not really looking at things. And again, how old were you 7 years ago?
The only reason I remember the date is I was turning 40 in a few weeks.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, you're a very young guy. You should not be having all these things that they kept testing for. I'm just like, this is not okay. I mean, yeah, your kidneys probably were not the greatest, and you were definitely some B vitamin deficiencies going on and some trace minerals. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. But I was as a bit irritated, and I didn't want them to kill one of the people that I cared about. So yeah, that was something Greece could be definitely foregone at that point. Since then, how many times now have you been in the hospital?
Let's see, I was in the hospital again about 5 months after that. One of the ramifications of all the drugs they gave me is I had a minor stroke. Mm-hmm. But even before then, it was things like sciatica. You were helping me with that. I just had a string of things just kept happening to me from all the stuff that all the medications that they were giving me.
Yeah, it was extensive.
So yeah, from there I had to learn to walk again, ride again, things of that nature. And then I got them and listened to them again, and basically I messed up my leg again because my leg collapsed underneath me.
Yep, remember that.
And yeah, so let's see. Then I went. I think it was the almost a year later where it was blood pressure went up almost uncontrollably. I think it was 200 over 200. Yeah, had that incident going
Yep.
on. And then I hadn't really had any hospital visits until this past December again.
Yeah. Tell me how diet has morphed over these last 7 years.
I've become much more sensitive to foods.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, ironically, it's the foods they tell me to eat that I don't feel very good eating at all. It is. I typically, if I eat something I'll know within half an hour, 45 minutes if I should go out of eating that. I start to get like my chest starts to tighten up, my back gets tight. I start to get a headache almost immediately when I eat some of the foods that I should not be eating.
I mean, I know it's kind of a pain, but it's also a nice thing. You just know, okay, I really should not do this. And it's nice to have that confirmation quite quickly. Can you recap for me why the fasting? Because I know you went through a period of fasting and then you did a 12-day fast, if I'm not mistaken.
Um, a lot of it was I started going through where it's like I knew I just needed to clean out my system.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to discover some of this. It was, as I mentioned earlier, after the first ICU incident, I had the stroke, and they specifically told me I needed to eat like 5 or 6 times a day, and I would just feel awful doing it. So I did the opposite. I limited myself. I would only eat between 12 and 6, and I dropped like 30 pounds sitting in bed just doing that. That was the only change I made.
So you were in bed the whole time and still losing weight.
Yeah, the one change there, and then so I've just kind of just expanded upon that over the years. A community of people online that were doing some fasting, and I was seeing some amazing results, and it was like I've done it enough times, and it was the mental clarity more than anything else for me is just it's great going through, but it sounds strange, but you can feel that your liver and your kidneys and like everything else and your heart, they're just running better.
And how many hours at night would you sleep when you're doing that?
Strangely enough, I would sleep less. Probably I'd be good with 5.
Yeah, because I remember some of those nights you were telling me it was like 3.5 hours. You're like, okay, I guess I'm done sleeping.
I'm done sleeping. If it wasn't so dark, I'd go for a walk around the block.
That was the amazing thing. And again, when I fasted, it was the same thing. I'm just like, I sleep very little. Sometimes I'll be up at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and I'm just like wide awake when normally I sleep so well. And it's just, I'm ready to go. So this last December, you spent a short time in the hospital again, did you not?
Yeah, it is. I went in again, and they seemed to think it was. They seemed to think I had a minor stroke, but that was inconclusive. They were just guessing because I'd had that incident with the stroke in the past. But it essentially started with like my vision would change. Even lying in bed, the room would start to spin. And, we did the full panels of blood works and things of that nature. And I'm starting to think it was more mineral deficiencies going on. You get an infection of some sort. You just exhaust everything going on there. So it took me, I would say, a good month to like recover from that.
And where most of my clients, I can do a fair amount of eclectic supplements with them. For you, we find your system is way more sensitive. There's only certain things that we can do, and I know as your system gets stronger, we'll be able to do more, because I'm very much suspicious that we still have some hidden, what we call stealth pathogens or stealth infections that have not been quote unquote discovered by your immune system and gotten out of there, but we're on that track. It's interesting how delicate your system still is even after all these years of working. And I know your diet hasn't been stellar the whole time, but it is interesting that I think you've told me when you've binged on occasion, it's like you pay for it.
Like I said, it's not as bad as the like crippling foods where I told you an hour, within half an hour, 45 minutes. But yeah, what I realize is my system doesn't clean out as fast. So if I eat something I'm not supposed to, it's like a 3-day recovery where I feel like really good again.
And so these minerals that they gave you just a bag of minerals. Is that what they call it, or electrolytes?
No, that's the funny thing. I kept asking for electrolytes. They wouldn't give me electrolytes. They give you drugs at the hospital. Drugs
And,
that have all the same side effects that I was trying to get rid of.
and so what did they end up doing? What did they give you?
Let's see. They gave me a couple of things. They gave me one for the dizziness and fatigue, and then they gave me another medication. It was supposed to assist with the kidneys to like help cleanse medications out of your system. However, all the side effects were dizziness and blurred vision.
What you already had.
Yeah, so I would wake up feeling better, and then I would take the medications they gave me, and like 2 hours later, it's like the room is spinning again. It took me about a week to figure out it was the medications.
And then where do you see now as you are? I mean, if you were going to rate your health on a scale of 1 to 10, kind of give me some numbers at the beginning where you kind of got to that idea, like, man, maybe my health is not the greatest. And then as you've gone through this process, where do you feel like it is today? Do you feel like it's on the right track? Where do you see the future going? Can you talk towards that?
Um, that's an interesting question. Definitely, if we're gonna say it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm gonna say a 5,
Hmm.
which
At
is
this
not
point,
good because that's probably the typical American. We're probably all 5s.
sure.
Okay, so I'm in that situation there. So what I realized though, and I've told you this multiple times, and I've known you for well over a decade, it was like you're right like every freaking time.
Well,
I would like to be correct one time, but I don't have a very good track record.
we'll talk about calcium in a moment, but go ahead.
But yeah, it's going through. It was what I realized on a personal level is in my health. It was I do better with simplicity. So if I can just have a couple of my favorite things, regularly, I'm much better. I even have friends of mine. I've told you this that was like, if I don't have a steak like in a couple of days, they notice. Apparently, I get moody.
Interesting.
You know, I remember about this time last year. It was we started to notice things of like chicken. I shouldn't eat chicken.
Yeah.
With that, it was I got to be the only person on the planet that blood sugar raises when he eats chicken.
Well, maybe not the only, but yes, we do see it.
It just stays high for days. It's like worse than sugar for me.
It is a typical allergy, and we've worked on gut and stuff, and so we know that we still have some issues there. And there may be a time when turkey or chicken won't do this to you, but today is not that day.
I'll stick to steak.
Yeah. So what do you feel like is ahead of you now? What do you see?
There's a couple of things I see on here. It was I need to get back on track to my regular eating that I was doing before. Like I said, eating lots of steak.
Yeah.
I think I told you. I think I did tell you the last time I was in there after the hospital stay because I had no signs to want to eat. I think all I ate was ice cream bars that week.
Yeah.
Not the healthiest diet.
It's one I'd prefer though, if I wish they were healthy.
But yeah, it is. The other thing for me is it's energy. Like surrounding myself with people with more like there's a aura that comes with some people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to explain it other than that. It's those things because I don't know, it feeds the soul.
Mm-hmm.
So it feeds the health, and it was like we've tested this. My blood pressure goes down substantially if I do that for for days at a time, it just drops.
Doing what?
Just it was like if I stick to the simple things and like around people with like good auras and good energy, it drops.
How fascinating. And it's something I definitely want to hear about from you is how over the last 7 years going through all this has your spiritual journey changed? What have you found?
Actually, that's changed a lot here lately. I was telling you after my last hospital visit, it was, I would get clarity, and I would, I remember going back to church for the first time, and one of the guys there, he immediately came up to me as soon as I walked in the door, and he prayed over me a bit, and like my head got clear. I didn't stay clear, but it was clear for a good like 4 to 6 hours, and I hadn't had that since before the hospital visits. That was
Awesome.
one of the things that led me to start looking at the medications.
Yes.
I mean, my vision would shift so much. I mean, I didn't want to. It took me 2 weeks to drive a car again because my vision would just shift, and I couldn't see anything. I couldn't read anything, things of that nature. And I kept getting that reinforcement with a group of guys I'm around where it was I hadn't mentioned anything to them, and they laid into me with that. And then I had a journey where it was I just kept hearing these things like just show up, just show up. And then like my phone starts blowing up and I'm having people around me like just show up. So I got invited to a healing service as well. And it was, I run into things in my brain was like, I keep hearing these things, but my brain is like, this won't work.
Yeah.
And I finally went and I walked in the room and like, there were hundreds of people there. It's like I go up and I got touched and like my brain got like crystal clear, like instantaneously.
That's awesome.
So, but like I said, I still struggle with it. My head is like, why is this working? But I tried everything in the physical world, during that, because it'd been a good 2-3 weeks at that point in time since the hospital.
Yeah.
And then instantaneously, it got better.
It's really good. So one of the things that I guess some of the doctors and things that you've seen have battled me on is calcium. I mean, we've done many things like liver products and things like that, but tell me about some of the calcium stories.
Okay. One of the things that was when you say calcium, it's like, most of us probably dismiss it. And see, it was calcium. Let's be specific. It's calcium lactate.
Yeah.
We don't need any limestone in our system here now.
That's right.
It is it was that my sciatica went away in like a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
Taking that. I believe a couple years ago it was thanks to Facebook memories and stories, I kept having this thing come up. I would get sick and then my foot would hurt and I started to notice in like you get your memories of like 3 or 4 years in a row that this would happen. So I could correlate it. It was like, okay, so I'm getting sick and I'm draining all the minerals out of my body. And it was like, okay, it's calcium.
Yeah.
I mean, it would get to the point where I couldn't walk.
I remember that.
I have a high pain threshold.
Yeah.
Couldn't walk. And it's, those. So I've come to realize anytime it's people around me get sick and I have to up my calcium levels. Now all my friends think I'm crazy when I tell them to take calcium.
Well, you're in good company. I still remember where I think it was probably 8 years ago. It was probably longer than that when I started seeing you just chiropractically. And I remember adjusting you, and it was difficult because for whatever reason, scleroderma is like a thickening of the skin. It makes it tough, it makes it hard. And your skin was always very tough. And then all of a sudden one day you come in and your skin is just soft. And all we had been doing at that point was just chiropractic. And I was watching just these amazing changes. in your body just from doing that, and some of the things that we found going on. So it was awesome to watch your body change in that way. And then when we really shifted gears, because all of a sudden all these things started happening, kidney, water retention, heart problems, all these things started happening, and probably some thyroid in there as well. And then began to work in a much deeper level on multiple planes. That's when a lot of things got better. And granted, I mean, we've been doing this, off and on for 7 years now. And there's been times where I haven't seen you for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden things are whatever they are, and now we reconnect and we're going after it again. And so that's why, as a future orientation, I just see your life as being shifted into this way, that now it seems more stable in what you're doing in terms of diet, in terms of supplements, in terms of your spiritual walk. And I'm just watching this body come alongside all of those beautiful changes. Anything else that you see that maybe I've missed?
No, you mentioned the first visits on that. I remember the first couple visits. I would say within the first month, the first thing that I noticed was my taste buds had changed.
Oh, that's right.
It was, I used to have like a refrigerator door full of hot sauce.
Yes, I remember that.
I remember going out with a friend of mine. We went to a Mongolian grill restaurant, and I would put some hot sauce on there. And I thought that I had a trick plate on me, because that hot sauce was on the plate and I'm sweating through the cloth napkin.
Yes.
What is happening here? And it was, you just happened to mention it, like, have you noticed anything with your taste? And I'm like, that's what happened.
Yes.
That is what happened. So it's the little changes that you start to notice and get in tune of that nature. The other one that I can think of, it was, this one was coming up on 5 years ago. It was right after my car got totaled, and I kept having the same incident kept recurring. It was a full-size truck would just stop in the middle of the road, and it would almost want to, because your office is kind of out there, driving out to go see you.
Yeah.
Like it would happen almost every week. And I remember you asking me, and I will admit, when you asked me this, I thought it was the stupidest question ever. You said, "Do you feel invisible?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" That rental car I'm driving is like Smurf blue. You can't miss that car. It is bright blue.
Yeah.
Where we're going through the thing. And it was, you mentioned that, and like, okay, at this point in time, it's like, I had that. I had like energy draining out of me, thing. And, we did another session where it was like, you gave me some additional supplements to do that. And you told me it would get better like over the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
in a couple days. And I just remember that Monday morning, my phone starts blowing up. And I was like, oh my gosh, it just popped in my head. I felt like I had to reach out to you. I probably had 15 people do that to me.
Yeah.
And that's another one of those things. It was like, I can't explain how it works, but there's just this energy of this aura that goes out there where we're all connected. And I had somehow got disconnected from that. And explain this. I still don't understand that the doors at the grocery store would not open for me.
Wild. Yeah.
I would have to follow people in because it would not open.
Yeah, when I checked you that day, I actually do remember, and I'm just thinking, you got some brain that is really blocked, and that's when I was curious. Does nobody call you, or you feel like you don't exist? Like people actually literally bump into you, like in the grocery store, like not see you, and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, and then all of a sudden I said, well, you may notice that everybody is going to start kind of reaching out to you, that you're going to be really on the radar again. You're off everybody's radar because you can't put out the electrical signal of your brain. And so as soon as we corrected that, to hear all that happening, that was pretty wild. But I'd forgotten about the doors of the grocery store. That was pretty. That one I'm not sure about, but it's pretty weird.
Well, it is from the accident. It was, there was another hospital visit that I missed because I didn't intentionally go for that, but that was, Apparently I had bruised my liver slamming on the brakes and then the car just simply hitting the truck. So it's not one of those things you notice immediately, but I got really moody then. Like I didn't want to talk to anyone. Just like I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to watch TV. Just like leave me alone. So that's not normal for me by any means.
Sure.
Going through those situations. As a matter of fact, I remember having to go in and do like a blood work like for an entire week. Through those situations, and that was another thing that I came in to start seeing you on.
Yep. You've definitely been through some wild experiences for sure.
But yeah, what I've come to learn out of this is like everything is interconnected. It all stems from that situation where it was, my first visit to the ICU. We go in there and it was because they kept thinking it was failure, things of that, and I remember you kept thinking it was some type of virus or an infection going through, and it took like 6 months where I talked to the specialist of the specialist of the specialist, where they like Troy was right the whole time. But the other thing I remember is you told me when I left the ICU that what I had in there was not permanent. And it was about 5-6 months after that where that specialist basically told me the same thing. The heart is the most resilient muscle in the body, so it's also the most likely to heal.
It is, and I don't know why they even want to hide the fact or not tell people that, but maybe they just never see it heal because they don't do anything that's actually going to be nutritive to it. So they just don't see it. Anything else before we wrap this up? This is awesome.
I think we've covered most of it.
Well, James, I appreciate you taking your time out of the day and having this conversation with us, and really letting other people know your story as well, because there's so many of these things happening, and we just think, I guess this is my plight, and it really doesn't have to be at all. And we can say, hey, we don't think James is completely out of the woods, but he is walking that direction, and every day is better. And your journey took you up and down, which was okay too. Nobody's journey has to be just completely straight up, and it's okay. It really is, and it's awesome to watch and to witness and walk alongside as you've gone through all this. And medical doctors, they do actually mean well. They really, really do. Just as I do, just as our friends do. We all want each other to be well, but sometimes it's just when I use this, but I would say that chiropractors and nutritionists are also guilty of this. That if all you have is a hammer, then everything starts looking like a nail. Well, if all I have is a drug or a surgical knife, then everything looks like it's a condition that I can work with this drug, or it's something I need to cut on. And chiropractors, it looks like you have a misalignment, so I'm just going to adjust it. And even as a nutritionist, it's probably, nutrition. And where I try to bring everything into that perspective of it could be nutrition, it could be chiropractic, it could be spiritual, and it probably is spiritual, but it could be those things that we want to make sure that we're working on each aspect. Could we need a medication for a period of time until we can rebuild tissues so that that medication is obsolete? Possibly. So there's never, it's never that you want to completely reject anything, because everything has its purpose and its place, and it's just using it in the right time and trying to see those signs and symptoms and ask really good questions so we can hopefully get a very good targeted approach to whatever is ailing to you. And for you, James, I know that we toot my own horn in this, and that I happen to be right many, many times. And part of it is just being able to look at all those things and at least have come up with something that was cohesive and made sense. And luckily it was correct, and it usually often is correct. And am I always going to get it right? No. I'm glad that I do a lot of the times. But I've got a very good helper that speaks into my ear all the time. And just as Spirit is leading each individual out there, we lean on that a lot, because I can't possibly know everything. Just as you found in this journey of yours, I mean, it's awesome to have that spiritual connection and have it also be very powerful in your life and do some miraculous healing too, which is an excellent way to go.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is it took me years to figure out is I have to have a baseline, which is part of the reason why I try and eat, steak almost every day, steak and eggs. Mm-hmm. The baseline. So it took me a long time to figure out like foods I'm sensitive to, because I did the sensitivity test and I come up clear on those. Mm-hmm. But I eat them and I get reactions. Yeah. And so I would introduce one or two things and I'd have to go back to eating, because sometimes it may take days for you to get a reaction to what you ate. Yeah. It took me the longest time to figure that out.
Yeah. And it is, and I believe you're a O blood type.
Yep, O positive.
Yeah, and so my O's, they typically can do as you do, but my A's cannot. Even some of my ABs cannot. And so as we go, if you're listening to this and you don't know your blood type, and just because James says, hey, steak is the way to go, well, that's likely for an O, but you may not be an O. And so there are these indicators, but as James, as you've done this, your body has, I think they say 64 different markers, not just A, B, AB, and O. There are 64 other markers within the blood that actually can dictate whether or not we're allergic to certain foods. So just because I'm an O and you're an O and you can do these things, I may not be able to do them. So it's each person on their journey, and you've done a great job of having those baselines and learning. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's like you gotta find like what your normal baseline is, where it was like what you get reactions to, what makes you sleepy, what gives you energy, what gives all these little things where if I add a supplement, if I add a medication, if I add like a new food, I can figure out what the ramifications are pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if I keep taking the stuff that's making me sick, I tend to get worse.
Yes. Excellent. James, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being such an amazing individual, really. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, Troy.
All right, well, for everybody listening, thanks for joining in and riding along with us. Until next time, I'm Dr. Troy, and remember, there is way more right with you than there is wrong with you.
Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach Dr. Munson at 360-893-8586 or email him at chiroman@dr.com. That's chiroman@dr.com. Check out our current workshop schedule on Facebook at Infinity Whole Health.
The information on Dr. Troy Munson's podcast is meant to educate the listener and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease.